I've seen a lot of things in my career, things that would make a citizen doubt my sanity, from being dispatched to chase a UFO to respond to calls of ghosts. But the most unusual thing that happened to me was witnessed by several officers and a dispatcher. One evening, I had brought in a guy for domestic violence, and he was a bit rowdy. I was joined in booking by the sergeant and another patrolman. I'm in the process of booking Mr. Quote unquote tough guy. When I glanced into cell number one, there was a guy in there, short haircut, glasses, a white t-shirt, just staring at us. I ignored him because I didn't want him to start banging on the window demanding a phone call or something, or some bullshit. So I finished the booking process with two and escorted Mr. Tough Guy into his cell, walking past cell number one. The guy in the cell just stood there, never saying a word or moving. We all then leave booking and go about our business. Sometime later, the sergeant asked me to check the paperwork for the prisoner to see if any were ready to transport to county jail. I grab the paperwork and go to booking and do a head count. Cell number one is empty. Wait. Cell number one is empty? This made me freak out, as I could have sworn that there was a prisoner right in cell number one. At least that's what I thought. I panicked and tell the sergeant, who also panics. He and I began to make phone calls to the detectives to see if they had moved the guy or had released him or anything. They all say they didn't go into booking at all. I then checked the computer and paperwork again, and the head count was accurate. No one had been placed in cell number one. Wait, what? So, I saw cell number one 2 hours ago. Now cell number one is empty, and the paperwork shows that no one is in cell number one. We go to the dispatch office and check the surveillance video for booking. We run the footage to where I can't be seen booking my prisoner. We fast forward to the point in the video where we all walk out. As soon as we walk past, the guy in number one blinks out of existence. We're all freaked out by the occurrence. Believe you me, when we try to transfer the video to DVD and USB drive, the guy himself did not appear at all. We all hear and see stuff every now and then, and prisoners in the detox tank can be seen talking to someone in the direction of cell number one, even though it appears empty. To this day, I'm wary of going into booking alone, and never, ever have coffee at night, because that probably made me see something. I haven't had coffee since, though, and nothing like that has ever happened, so I'm pretty sure it was the coffee, but god damn, that was really fucking creepy. I used to do routine welfare checks. I answered a welfare check call one late night between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. It was on an elderly woman who lived next door to the caller and had not been seen her for some time. Now, the reason that she called was because the woman always did a walk around the neighborhood, sometimes twice during the day, but always one time during the day. The person worked remote, so she always saw the lady every single day without fail for over 5-6 years. The night we were having a bad thunderstorm without the rain, I get to the compliance house to speak to her first, wondering why she called at this time. She tells me the lady in the next door in her 90s lives alone and she has not seen her in weeks, and explained that she's always seen her walking, but she was not home for 1 week because she was out of town. She returned home but hasn't seen her since. I started thinking she is probably deceased and has been for some time. The car has a 3-inch layer of dust on it. The mail is piling up and no lights are on. First, I walk to the side door and knock on the door with my flashlight, knocking loud enough an elderly person with some hearing should hear it. And I know that because my grandfather was half deaf. so I know how loud to bang or knock or to talk. After a few minutes of no response, I turned around and walked to the backyard looking at the windows, and I find everything okay. The complainant is with me and is saying she doesn't know of any relatives of the lady. I'm sure by now that she's probably deceased. As I said before, I said, look, she's probably deceased. But just to be sure, I walk into the front of the house and notice her blinds are up on the front windows and I can see a glow from inside. I'm, however, not tall enough to look into the windows, which are probably 7 feet off the ground, as I'm under 6 foot tall. The compliant runs next door and grabs a bucket for me to stand on. I get on the bucket and bingo! I see the living room. The glow was from the TV, which was on a blue screen and is bright enough. I didn't need my flashlight to see it. I looked first at the floor to make sure she had not fallen to her couch, recliner, everything, all that stuff. That was all empty. The telephone at home base was blinking red with the missed calls and voicemails from the living room, which was a hallway that was dark and I couldn't see down. Using my flashlight, I could only see an open door down the hallway, still no signs of life. I turned around and told the compliant that everything looked okay and nothing was disturbed. I turned back around and an elderly woman is looking back at me with her face right up next to the glass. I couldn't breathe. It felt as I had been hit in the chest by a bat. I fell backward and off to the bucket as it startled me. I hit the ground hard and the compliant rushed to me. Pushed her up as she was trying to help me up. I ran back up on the bucket. My heart was pounding, but I had to see. Instinct had my hand on my gun. The other was up on the window. I looked back and saw a frail elderly woman standing in the hallway wearing a long nightgown with her back to me. She turned her head to the side and looked at me out of the corner of her eye and slowly walked to the view down the dark hallway. That unnerved me. I got down and looked at the client who was standing there with a puzzled look on her face. All I could say, I saw her. By now the wind had picked up and began to rain. I began to walk back to my car by the road. I turned to the client and said, "Don't come back here." I got in the car and drove to the police department. Never found out about the lady who lived there. The complainant didn't call back, and the house now has different tenants inside. I think something's ever left alone, and that's exactly what I did. I'm a retired police officer, and this happened about 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago, I took an alarm call to the old PTA building across the street from courthouse in Austin, Texas. The alarm had already gone quiet when I showed up with the senior officer. We found an unsecured door slightly open on the east side, so he had me post up there while he finished the perimeter and other officers arrived. I was staring right at the door when the alarm activated again, and the door slammed shut in my face loudly. The senior officer ran back to my position, asked why I closed the door. I told him I didn't, and that I was actually kind of freaked out, not to mention I was stuck inside. I was literally locked inside. Called for a K9. The dog arrived shortly. I went in with K9 to clear the building. We found nothing, but the entire time the dog was acting very hinky, like someone was in the building but wasn't picking up a scent. We secured the building and a key holder showed up. He said, "Well, you know the place is haunted, right?" I said, "I'm sorry, the place is what?" He said, "Oh yeah, the place is haunted. It's been haunted for about since I started working here, which is about, gosh, decades ago." I was like, "Why did you just start to show up?" And he says, "Oh, I was having a drink with some friends and found out about the alarm. I walked the entire way here because I didn't have a car because I was going to be drinking, and I didn't think that, I didn't think to call an Uber for, a 12, 13-minute walk." There was a secretary, and I said, "Okay, well, go on. What about this place?" "Well, there was a secretary who worked there for about 30 years, and after she died, she kept showing up for work. papers fly off the desk, door closes, sightings, the works, all that other stuff. We both told the keyhole the next time the alarm call there, it was all his, and he agreed. He said, "Don't worry, I got this." And we never went back. Call me Winston. That is not my real name, but that's the name I'm choosing to use for this. I went to respond to a call about possible breaking and entering. A young woman came home to find a broken window downstairs, but nothing seems to be stolen, and she couldn't find anyone inside. But when she went upstairs to go to bed, she thought she could hear footsteps downstairs, but soon after she said that her call disconnected and the woman wouldn't pick up any of the callbacks. There was at least 5 calling backs, but none of them happened. After the call and arrived at the house, it wasn't in the best part of town, but I've been a police officer for 10 years. I wasn't scared. Nothing I haven't seen, but the house seemed a little bit off. It was a quite small house, and it would seem pretty cramped for the house to be split into 2 floors. I'm not exactly sure how a bed could even fit in one of the floors. Maybe it was a small bed, I don't know, but it just seemed a little bit off. I've knocked on the door, and after about a minute I knocked again, no answer. And then I pressed the doorbell, no answer. After another minute I decided to try a 3rd time, really just banging on that door. That might do the trick, and constantly pressing the doorbell, but there was still no answer. After no answer 3 times, I decided to scope around and look around the house on the outside. I found the busted window and the call was about, and the window seemed big enough to crawl in with pretty ease. I slammed my head through the window and yelled out, "This is the police." No answer. Then I said again, "This is the police, come out with your hands up." Again, there was no answer. Then I radioed to dispatch, saying this house seemed to be empty though, but 2 other officers were en route to my location, and both officers said, "Look, just to be sure, you have a gun and a taser and a flashlight. It couldn't hurt to look." And they said, but to wait though until they got there though. But to be honest though, it didn't seem right to wait around if someone was really in danger. So I climbed through the window into the house. It was the window that I came through was into the kitchen, semi over some broken glass, and I pulled out my gun and started to walk through the house. I decided to try to make sure that my presence was known as a police officer with the gun into the house. I didn't hear any footsteps, so I went upstairs. As the woman on the phone told dispatch, she heard footsteps downstairs, so maybe going upstairs. I was thinking that I might get somewhere. I wasn't trying to be silent, but I wasn't trying to be too loud. As person upstairs could have a weapon or holding someone at gunpoint. When I was at the bedroom, when I was upstairs, I was near a bedroom. All of the doors were closed. And I asked, "Ma'am, this is a police officer, are you okay?" A soft female voice said, "Yes." I followed the sound of the voice, and I said, "Ma'am, are you sure you're okay?" And she said, "Yes." I got to the bedroom where a woman was sitting up under the covers. I looked at her and asked if she was okay, but she said she was fine. The lights, I kept the lights in the bedroom off though, but there's enough natural moonlight to see her face, and she looked to be in distress. I asked her why did she hang up the phone and why didn't she respond to any of the callbacks. She said no one is here, and there was a trouble in her voice, so I knew something was off. And I remember I was having coffee with the police officer a few months back. She couldn't really speak on like what was actually happening, and so the officer that I was talking to did hand gestures. Thinking back to what the guy did, I nodded my head slightly, heading out to the closet. She shook her head, no. I put my head down to under. Then I put my head down under the bed quickly, not looking though, but just like nodding my head down. She shook her head. Yes. So then I said, okay, ma'am, please just sign this release form saying that I was here and there's no one else in the house. When she was close, she said, all right, fine. When she was close enough, I pushed her out of the room, slammed the door, and yelled to get out from under the bed. Now, don't make any sounds or I will shoot. Now, I'm not going to say exactly what I said because there's a lot of like swear words in there though, but to kind of like make the person be scared though, but don't make any sounds or I will shoot. I started to see a dark figure come out from under the bed, and I said, drop your weapons. He dropped what sounded like a gun. Now, I said, get down on the ground with your hands on the ground and cross your legs. I made the arrest right there and brought him outside. Just as we stepped out, the officers are right there and put him in the back of one of the cop cars. The woman, and I asked why did she hang up. She hung up as soon as she heard the footsteps were upstairs. She didn't pick up any return phone calls as she was actually confronted with the man and said, don't you dare answer that phone call or I will shoot you right there. I found out that the man was actually Deontay Vishosky, and he was the female's ex-boyfriend, and he's been arrested 3 times for attempted murder, claiming that, and he was claiming that if a white girl breaks up with me, she deserves to die as this man was black. Obviously, this black dude had no idea what the fuck he was talking about, and is going to be put behind bars long after I retire. And that was the worst encounter I had as a police officer. It was a new cop, and I was my FTO and I were on a residential street in the middle of the night. I usually work the early mornings from like 6 a.m. starting, but I was up the night time, whatever. I don't really care. We found a car position perpendicular to the road, and the driver seemed to be trying to get turned around or turning around, but just kept moving back and forth. We contacted the driver, who was a female in her early 20s. It is what we assumed, maybe early 30s, but she just looked pretty good. Anyways, she was lucid and coherent. She asked me how to get to a nearby neighborhood called Joaquin Murrieta, but she was being somewhat evasive too in her questions to my questions. Eventually, she reluctantly told me that her family was being held hostage and that the only way to get them released would be to complete missions for the CIA. I was like, okay, well, obviously no, because CIA doesn't take hostage of innocent people or just civilians, and they don't ask you to do special missions for CIA. No. I figured she was on drugs or just crazy. My FTO was a DRE, which is a pretty high rank in the police force. I mean, it doesn't mean like jack shit outside of the police force, but inside the police force it did. And he determined she wasn't on drugs. Okay, so she was just crazy and got hot, but that's not my business though. Anyways, my FDO was a DRE, and he said she's not on drugs, so let's just figure out what's going on. Then she told me that she had a device in her car, which was like a handle with an arrow on the top of it. She said if she held the device, the arrow would glow when it was positioned in the direction she was supposed to go to continue her mission. As if I could examine the device, she said, sure. I said to humor her and held the device out while slowly turning in a circle. Nothing. Oh my god. To my shock, the arrow suddenly brightened when it was slowly turned. When it brightened when it was pointed toward the Joaquin Murrieta neighborhood, was which she needed to go. And only when it was pointing that direction, she had an expression on her face like, see, I told you so, I told you so. I'm like, holy shit, either one, this is some crazy like remote control device that she has. 2 is a very smart engineer, whoever designed this. Or 3, this is actually fucking true. I freaked out. It has I never seen a device like that before or since. My FDO was also freaked out, and reasonably so. And he told me she's not committing any crimes. Let's get the fuck out of here. So we left, and to this day, I have no idea what was actually happening there. And to be honest, I don't think I want to know.